Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Canon and Plot Holes. Today we're going to talk about what Stargate is. It's not only my favorite sci-fi series of all time, I think it's responsible for a resurgence in sci-fi TV shows in the last 20 years. I'm going to stick to a Stargate overview in the first part of this video, then my opinion and commentary will be towards the end. It should only be about a minute or two. Feel free to skip to that chapter in the description if that's what you're looking for. Stargate itself started as a theatrical release movie in 1994. The movie was written and directed by Ronald Emmerich and Dean Devlin. It starred Kurt Russell as Jack O'Neill and James Spader as Daniel Jackson.
Allergies.
The movie follows Colonel O'Neill and Dr. Jackson through a stone ring that transports objects to another planet named Abydos, where they find a large village of people who are enslaved by an alien posing as the Egyptian god Ra. Colonel O'Neill's team is then stuck on the planet because Dr. Jackson can't realign the gate back to Earth. The team is eventually beset upon by Ra and his soldiers when he shows up to the planet to lord over his subjects and collect his mined minerals. The movie comes to a glorious, explosive end when Ra is killed with a nuclear device. I don't want to go too much into detail because this movie is a sci-fi classic and anyone who hasn't seen it needs to go watch it right now. With the worldwide hit that was the Stargate movie, MGM greenlit a TV series called Stargate SG-1. It followed an Air Force team called SG-1 that would travel to other planets through the Stargate from the 1994 movie. The TV series was preceded by a Showtime movie using the first two episodes cut together. A recut version of this movie was released in 2009 called Children of the Gods. The show primarily took place at a real location, a mountain bunker called NORAD. It was secretly Stargate Command in the TV show. The team consisted of Colonel Jack O'Neill,
O'Neill. 2 L's.
Captain Samantha Carter,
I'm an Air Force officer just like you are, Colonel. And just because my reproductive organs are on the inside instead of the outside, doesn't mean I can't handle whatever you can handle.
Dr. Daniel Jackson,
Well, maybe what I don't believe is that I can light a candle with my mind. You see, I find it a lot easier to use a lighter or a match. It's much more practical.
and Teal'c.
Indeed. Indeed. Indeed.
Carter was promoted to Major in Season 3 and Lieutenant Colonel in Season 8. Dr. Jackson was replaced temporarily with Jonas Quinn in Season 6. After Jack O'Neill was promoted to Brigadier General and switched to guest appearances with Sam Carter in Season 9, two new members were added, Cameron Mitchell in Season 9 and Vala Maldoran in Season 10. The first big bad of the series were the goa'uld. They have two different descriptions depending on whether you watch the 1994 movie or the TV series. Today, I'm just going to be referencing the SG-1 version of the goa'ulds. They are a race of sentient, parasitic beings that take over hosts. Their hosts can be pretty much any life form, but prefer humans. Their initial inhabitants were a race called Unas before they found humans and learned that they could be easily controlled by their own kind and started taking them as hosts. They could live for thousands of years and rarely died from old age. Because of their need for power, they would routinely kill each other or go into hiding for centuries. This need for power was amplified by a device called a sarcophagus, which gave them and their hosts the long lifespan as well as made them even more mad for power. They also possessed a genetic memory, making it so all of their memories were passed on to their spawn. The two of the worst goa'uld that SG-1 came up against were Apophis and Anubis. Apophis was the brother of Ra, who was killed in the 1994 movie. In the series SG-1, he comes back to Earth through the open Stargate, learning that Earth has evolved to become a threat to him and other goa'uld. SG-1 and Apophis routinely fought, killed, maimed each other, ending in his final death in Season 5 at the hands of SG-1. Anubis, on the other hand, became an ascended being and was kicked out of their realm to become a half-ascended being, ultimately leading to the near destruction of Earth. He was finally defeated when a clone that had his genetic memories was attempting to ascend. He was killed by Dr. Jackson and Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell before he could. The second big bad in the series was the Replicators. They were a race of machines that had a single directive to multiply. They did this by taking over ships with high levels of technology and using them to take even more ships. In the episode of SG-1 called Menace, the origins of the Replicators were teased. A robot named Reese, who was made of nanites, apparently created replicators on her home planet after wanting friends to play with. When they became too numerous, she would lose control of them. When Reese created them, she gave them a directive to multiply, and this ultimately became their driving force when she was taken offline. In the episode Enemies, SG-1 was sent to an unknown galaxy, where the replicators already were, making it clear that they were a blight on the whole universe, not just the Milky Way, Pegasus, and Ida galaxies. The third big bad of SG-1 were the Ori, a group of ascended beings that instead of keeping out of their galaxy's business like the Milky Way ascended beings, they used their ascended knowledge to subjugate their galaxy through a religion they created to give them more power through worship. Using artificially evolved humans called priors, they would begin to try and convert humans in the Milky Way galaxy to give them more power over the local ascended beings so that they could take over our galaxy. SG-1 would face many setbacks, but ultimately was able to defeat the Ori with a weapon of mass destruction that Merlin made to kill ascended beings. Then Adria, the half-ascended being that the Ori created, would be defeated after using an Arc of Truth to show the priors the lies of the Ori, weakening Adria enough for the ascended being Morgan to defeat her. There were many other small enemies that SG-1 had to deal with, but I will likely make videos on those themselves and attempt to keep this video as short as possible. And seeing as I touched on the Arc of Truth, let's talk about the straight-to-video movies that were made after SG-1 series ended in Season 11. They were The Arc of Truth and Continuum. The Arc of Truth was the conclusion of the Ori storyline. SG-1 embarked on a mission to the Alterran home galaxy to find the Arc of Truth, an ancient device capable of defeating the Ori once and for all. They ultimately find the Arc of Truth and use it to show the truth of the Ori to the priors, weakening Adria enough to let the ascended being Morgan defeat her. Continuum was a time travel alternate reality movie that finds Colonels Cameron Mitchell, Samantha Carter, and Dr. Jackson stuck on Earth with an altered timeline due to Ball's interference in the past. The movie ultimately sends Colonel Mitchell back into the past to prevent Ball from stopping the gate from reaching the US, where it ultimately allows SG-1 to find and defeat the goa'uld. Ultimately, the whole of the Stargate universe started with these two items, the 1994 movie and the SG-1 series. I feel that since they were so well produced and written, it made it easy for people to move from other franchises like Star Trek and Star Wars. For me, it was a lack of regular sci-fi content in the late 90s, early aughts that drew me to the franchise. The combination of military and sci-fi made it really intriguing concept that really drew me in. One thing I've noticed is there isn't much of the culture effect from Stargate that a series like Star Trek has had. I feel that's because the series and characters were so close to us in reality that a lot of the impact that it did make was in smaller degrees and not massive ones like Star Trek had on race, science, and our spoken word. One impact I did take notice of years ago was the FNP-90. A weapon that was quite unpopular in most military circles became extremely popular in most casual circles after it was introduced in the series in Season 4. Personally, I've considered getting my FFL a few times just to get a real automatic version of that gun. One aspect of Stargate as a whole that I really like is the compounding story arcs that made you really pay attention to each episode. As some would be solved in an episode or two, but others would take seasons, with little hints and pushes to the plot and major changes, sometimes without resolving them, or even starting multiple arcs from a closed one. As I've gone on quite a bit about Stargate at this point, I'm ending this video to keep it short. Please watch for part 2 of What is Stargate in the next week or two, where I'll go over Stargate Atlantis and Stargate Universe. Please like and subscribe and get the bell on if you enjoyed my video.